of the Finance and Governance Committee to order. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this hearing on the Mayor's 2025 proposed capital improvements budget. First, I want to thank all of my colleagues who are with me, and I know that some of them will be in and out, but Councilmember White, Chair of our Sustainability and Utilities Committee, as well as Councilmember Nancy Day Acauer, our Recreation and Parks and Neighborhoods Committee, our fun committee is what I like to call it. And also want to thank our department leaders who are here to discuss the administration's plans and proposed budget. And of course, all of the residents who are joining us either in person or virtually today. And also want to thank all the residents who engaged throughout this week. The mayor's office and the administration had 3 town halls to engage folks this week, and so I want to thank everyone who participated in those as well. That feedback is critical for us, even if it's not a project that you see this year. It informs our decisions year over year. It was great looking through the current budget to see some of those things that I know that I've heard from neighbors throughout the years be in this year's budget. So we can thank everyone who does continue to engage around this. The purpose of this hearing today is to present the city's capital improvement budget and capital improvements program to residents. Today's conversation will be departmental overviews of the entire capital budget, where we will hear presentations from our Finance and Management Department, Department of Public Service, Recreation and Parks Department, Department of Public Safety, Department of Development, and Columbus Water and Power. The capital projects we are discussing tonight concern physical assets here in our city, our roads, our sidewalks, our parks, recreation centers, and other physical infrastructure. We understand how important these infrastructure investments are, and for that reason, it has been a longstanding practice and really a policy of the city to set aside a quarter of every income tax dollar for capital projects and debt servicing. This funding structure ensures that the city is able to consistently put out these budgets every single year. The city's AAA bond rating also ensures that the city can borrow money at the lowest interest rate, and as a result, it saves Columbus millions upon millions of dollars every year through these lower interest rates, allowing us to do even more projects each year. Today's meeting structure will be pretty simple. Following the presentations and questions from council members, we will open the floor to speakers who have signed up to speak, and we'll do our best to address questions asked via our YouTube and Facebook stream. So I encourage folks that are streaming, go ahead and put those questions that you may have in the chat, and we'll address them as we go along, as well as any of the members of the public that are here today. We didn't receive any speaker slips, but because of the size today, we're going to make sure that if folks do have questions, that they can come up and ask those. If there are any residents' questions that are not addressed during the department's presentations, I will ask them during the public testimony portion of the hearing. And if we don't have an answer for you today, we'll make sure we get those to you. My staff is currently monitoring, again, all of those answers on our live stream, so make sure you pop those in there. The capital budget you'll hear about tonight, this afternoon, I should say, is proposed budget. It is not the final. It is through these public input processes and community conversations that we will arrive at a final product that council will vote on before our August recess at our July 28th meeting. So with us tonight, we have from our Department of Finance and Management, our Director, Chris Long, who is with us. The Assistant Director of Public Service, Ms. Andrea Losick, is here with us. Our Deputy Director of Capital, Conservation and Strategy for Recreation and Parks, Craig Murphy, is with us. I think that title gets longer every year. I think they just add something onto it. Also, our Deputy Director and Fiscal Officer for Public Safety is with us, Tricia Wenzel. The Deputy Director for the Department of Development, Mr. Bill Webster, is with us. And the Deputy Director of Columbus Water and Power, Mr. John Lee, is here with us today. Before we jump into our department presentations, I do want to acknowledge my colleague, Councilmember Rosa De Padilla, that just joined us. Are there any opening comments or statements from and Councilmember Beatty, you were hiding behind. I'm sorry, I couldn't see. Any opening remarks or comments from my colleagues before we get started? Yeah. Councilmember White.
As always, just a thank you to you and your team for all the work that you guys do behind the scenes to kind of get us to this day. As still a newbie, I'm going to claim that until re-election time period, but as a newbie, kind of having that guidance from your staff to help us understand what this looks like and bring questions to our departments who can answer those questions for us has been extremely helpful. So thank you to you and your team for all the work that you all do to get us to this point.
Thank you, council member. And yes, you may be a newbie, but as chairs of our public utilities committee, you, as you will see in the presentation, you account for more than half of our capital budget. So thank you and your team for the work that you all do as well. Councilmember Russell Deputy.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to echo the appreciation from Council Member White. I also want to I think I do this every year around capital budget season, but as we jump in, I sometimes do this at the end, but I think at the beginning, this is just a reminder to our residents that the capital budget is one strategy to getting things done. I think that a lot of times when we talk about the capital budget, and especially when we talk about residents, they hear a lot of the things that are in the capital budget, and there might be things that they care about that they feel might be missing. But we have incredible opportunities, especially now with Link Us. We have TSI, that's transit supported infrastructure. That means things like more sidewalks, trails, more street improvements that we can also loop in. I mean, I think as we looked at this capital budget, we thought about some sidewalks that, might be missing from some communities that are actually in the TSI projects, right? That it may be part of a roadway project, that we may put some other improvements on Livingston Avenue. Not only are we doing streets or street resurfacing, we're also doing a streetscape project on Livingston Avenue, which we were able to then pair with a market study, right? So I just wanted to point that out to folks as they look at this, because this is not the only way to get the things that you care about funded. This is just one strategy. And so as we have the conversation with the community and the continued conversation, just for folks to keep that in mind, I also highly encourage them, if they have not engaged with us, to engage with your council member, to have the conversations with the chairs around the things that might be missing, to ensure that either that's someplace else accounted for, or that we can have the conversation how that might be, that gap might be filled for that community. So that's my annual soliloquy about the capital budget that I want folks to keep in mind. But thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. With that, we will jump right into our presentation, starting first off with our Department of Finance and Management. Director Long, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Bankston and members of council. Really appreciate the opportunity to present the mayor's 2025 capital budget. Also a note of thanks to President Hardin for his time and consideration, and Auditor Kilgore for her partnership as well. So my goal for today's presentation is to really provide a high-level overview of the mayor's budget, as well as in connection with Councilmember Barosa de Padilla's remarks, is just give a high-level overview of the budget cycles that we have at the city. What is a capital budget versus an operating budget? As you mentioned, there's a lot of different revenue streams and opportunities to invest in neighborhoods. Whoops. I think if we could have the slideshow. Wonderful, thank you. So I think it's probably helpful to know what a capital budget is not, or to what does not include. And so the city, the staff, the supplies and services, think of it as programming that the city offers, is represented by its operating budget, which I know is not why we're here today to discuss. But again, staffing, supplies, and services are considered operating dollars. And those are the people and the programs that are offered to the citizens of this city. And we fund that through our income tax revenues, through our enterprise revenues, which are the utility bills that our residents pay, and also through property tax revenues. What we obviously are here to talk about today is the city's capital budget. And the capital budget, backing up, if operating pays for the supplies, the services, and the people, right, and the programming, the capital budget represents basically the infrastructure where those things take place, right? Our buildings, our substations, our fire stations, our rec centers, our streets and sidewalks, and in some cases our vehicles, our fire apparatus, our refuse vehicles. It's where all of those services happen. And Of course, we need to invest in new infrastructure, we need to maintain existing infrastructure, and so our operating budget is the way in which we address those things. We budget for the capital budget in really two different ways. One is a forward-looking 6-year capital improvement program, and that is available out on our website for citizens to review. We also have our 1-year capital improvement budget, which is what's with our city council to consider now. We pay for the capital budget, or we reserve funds to pay for the capital budget from two primary sources. One is income tax. So we set aside 25 cents or 25% of every dollar of income tax specifically into an income tax set-aside account. So that's reserved for our capital budget. And the other primary source of funding the city's capital infrastructure needs are what we call enterprise fund revenues. These are really the utility bills that our residents pay for electricity and water and storm sewer services. So this is just a really simple graphic that I think shows the relationship between the revenues and our capital investments. I know it's a little bit hard to read, apologies. But so if the city of Columbus is at the center, the red dot indicates our revenue sources, which again are income tax, or at least 25% of that, as well as our enterprise fund revenues. The yellow dot or circle on the bottom is the capital improvement budget that really is generated from the underlying revenues. And the green, it represents a bond sale. And so that will be presented to council for future consideration. But all of these revenues, obviously they don't come in all at once, right? And so they come in over time, but our capital improvement projects, can't wait, right? So the revenues go to support the issuance of municipal bonds. And so whether those be income tax revenues or enterprise fund revenues, the city is able to monetize those revenues by bond placements. And we're fortunate to have great partnership and expertise of Audra Kilgore and her team, which are amazing partners in helping the city do bond placements and get those dollars in to fund capital projects. In terms of development, how do capital budgets be, how do they come into being and are formed? This and what role finance plays in that is we're really a compiler of all of the different capital requests from our different departments and directors who have their own advocacy and interacting with citizens every day. So we compile all those requests, which are submitted to the finance department by September 15th of each year. We work with our auditor to set capacity. We want to ensure that we have the necessary resources to fund a capital budget. And then, of course, we review all those with the mayor. We ensure that it is reflective of his priorities and the needs of the community. And, of course, working with all of you to adopt a capital budget. Obviously, we're in sort of the last few phases of this, and today's hearing is representative of the hearings and participation that we're seeking from the community, and then obviously adoption at some point. Again, sorry, the numbers are a little bit hard to read, but the main takeaway here is over the last 10 years, the city's capital budget has grown from a little over $1 billion in 2016 to almost $2.9 billion in the proposed 2025 capital budget. In terms of perspective, last year's capital budget was about $1.9 billion. Again, this year's about almost 2.9, so considerable growth there. New funding has increased from a little over $1.3 million last year to about $2 billion this year, about $700 million increase in new funding. And that's really reflective of the strength of our local economy. None of that would be possible without residents, their income tax revenues, and the utility bills that they pay. And again, reflective of the growth of our city and our regional economy. And so it's exciting that we have that level of investment that we can place in the community. The next slide just gives a really simple breakdown of what portion of the capital budget is supported by income tax and what portion, of the budget is supported by enterprise fund revenues. So the blue piece of the pie is supported by that 25% set aside of every income tax dollar that is received by the city. That accounts for about 30% of the overall capital budget. The red portion of the pie is the part that is supported by enterprise fund revenues. These are very important investments in the city's utility infrastructure, and collectively about $2.85 billion. So in addition to finance helping to develop the capital budget, finance is also an agency that utilizes capital dollars. And so this is just a one-page brief breakdown of how the finance department leverages or utilizes the city's capital budget. And these line items are requests in the 2025 capital budget. So part of finance's role is also managing and operating city buildings. And municipal campus, police substations, fire stations are under the purview, at least the operations, facility operations of those facilities. And so, as with any building, they just require, frequent investment and upkeep. And so that line item for facility renovations is just standard small-scale renovations that we have to maintain our city buildings, whether it be HVAC, electric, plumbing, those types of things. Construction management, we have a construction management office that does larger scale renovations to city buildings, might be at Columbus Public Health or again at various public safety locations or even municipal campus. So that $2 million line item is for larger scale renovations. And those are both citywide investments. So they're not restricted to one planning area or one geographic location. They're spread across city buildings and locations. And then we also have sometimes larger scale renovation projects on our municipal campus, which obviously would involve City Hall or our Central Safety Building, our 77 North Front and Coleman building as well. We're also investing in COSI. COSI is a city-owned building. They do amazing programming, but the sort of the nuts and bolts capital investment is the responsibility of the city. They have some HVAC investment that is required there to maintain core operations of HVAC. So we have a request in this year's capital budget for $650,000 for HVAC improvements at COSI. And then fleet management handles all of the vehicle repairs, replacements, and fueling of citywide vehicles. And as such, they have capital improvements needed at their locations. And then finally, the Department of Finance is working with our construction management team to design and construct a new municipal court building. It will be located at 410 High Street, down by the existing municipal court building. It's still in the design phase, but we're hoping to get final design wrapped up here within the next year. But we're also hopeful that we can do actual site work next year. So it would involve a demolition of the existing Carnes building that's located at 410 South High, and then doing some initial site work. So that would be, again, these would all be downtown type improvements. And then just wrapping up, here is my contact information. Certainly happy to answer questions from you or residents at any time. I wanted to have a special thanks to Kyle Seaver-Hart, who's a deputy director in our department and really manages the creation of the capital budget. Many thanks to her for all her hard work. And then we have a link, and I got fancy with a QR code that I think works, I hope works. And appreciate, again, your time and consideration, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. One question that did come in from one of our area commissioners, Ms. Sheila Eubanks, and thanks for watching, Madam Commissioner. She asked a question, and I think it's a fair one, because when we talk about our capital budget, it's actually like a year behind, right? So we talk about all these projects, and folks are like, well, when is that money going to be spent? So basically, that is her question: is we're talking about this particular budget. When do those dollars actually go out the door? I think it also is a question that I probably ask every year. Could you just cover, when we see what the proposed budget is, there's new funding, right? But there's also carryover funding from previous years. So if you could just answer that question, when do those dollars get spent, and then that distinction between carryover and new funding?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bankston. Excellent question. You're absolutely right. These are large-scale capital projects that take years. And as such, we never really spend capital dollars in the same year that they're adopted. Many times we don't. And so prior years' capital budget adopted funds that aren't spent have to be reincorporated into a new capital budget. And so each year what we'll see for council's consideration are new funding and then carryover funding, which would be, again, it could be last year's capital budget or even prior to last year's capital budget that are rolled into that. Hopefully that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Ms. Eubanks, again, the best way to put that is it's really a cash flow. It's when those projects are ready is when we would go to do a bond sale to then finance those particular projects. So as far as when it is spent, it is on project per project basis. And so hopefully that answers your question. Any questions from my colleagues? Councilmember Rosa de Padilla.
I have two questions, and I'll go kind of in order of what you had on the list. But can you talk a little bit about the relationship of the buildings that we own that might be leased out to other nonprofits and what that looks like? Because I know there are some nuances in that relationship, and we're seeing COSI here. I just want to ensure that folks understand when they're seeing something that may seem like a different organization, why are we making those investments there? And can you just talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilmember. So yes, the city does partner with, community agencies. And I think the key test is, are they providing a service or a program to the community? And specifically, are they providing a service or program to the community that the city can't offer? And so in those cases, we work really on a case-by-case basis, and we do, leases and lease structures with a variety of organizations that they may be operating out of a city facility. REAP is another great example of that. Again, where they're filling a need that the city can't, and so what we can bring to the table to help meet that need is, a physical asset or resource.
And I think it's just an interesting, as we talk about the FRAC, so as we talk about our funding, especially to nonprofits, we have these city assets that are assets of the city, and we want to make sure that we're investing in them because that's how we stored our dollars to ensure that. And I think it takes a little bit of the onus, not a little bit, but it takes the onus off of those organizations so that they can really put those dollars towards programming, and we are ensuring that we are taking care of the assets that we have. So I just wanted to provide some clarity to other organizations that might not understand that relationship, and then also to our residents who might look at that and say, well, why are we giving to these organizations or not others, or why are we paying for an HVAC system, right? Yeah. My other question is, and you talked a little bit about this, we've had a lot of conversations about the courthouse. Yes. And so can you talk a little bit about what that timeline actually looks like, and do we have a more solidified timeline for the courthouse?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. And you're right, this has been in development for several years, and we are closing in on final design. So we've been working, meaning the finance department has been working in cooperation not only with our design team, but also with the court and the clerk of courts and the judges, with our city attorney's office, really all the stakeholders that are involved, the county as well, to design a courthouse that's going to meet the needs of the community. And so, that's taken quite a while, honestly, but we're closing in on what we believe is a final design. And even though design will continue, even after we have like kind of a final largely final design, what we're hopeful is that we can begin the demolition of the Carnes building, which would be where this new courthouse will sit, sometime early next spring. And then shortly thereafter, we could actually begin some early site work on the new building, so underground utilities and some foundation work. And so it is moving along. We all wish it would have been a little bit faster, of course, but it's getting there.
Sure, and I think the conversation that we've had is, just the concerns about, everyone is experiencing the increase in materials and the increased costs, the the delays in the construction are just, inflating some of those costs. So I think there's just a concern of how can we keep on a timeline that feels reasonable and that moves past what some of those challenges might be to ensure that we're being cost effective as much as we can be in the building of the courthouse. So.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're 100% right. And one of the first, so this is a construction manager at risk contract, which is great in the sense that it'll allow us to phase construction. And to your point, the first part of that phase construction would be buying or acquiring a lot of those long lead time, highly price sensitive materials. But you're absolutely right. Delay costs dollars ultimately. So we're trying to move that along as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Seeing no other questions, we'll go on to our next department. Thank you, Director. Next up is our Department of Public Service, and we have our Assistant Director, Andrea Losick, who is here with us. We'll kick it over to you.
Good afternoon, Chair Bankston and other members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly discuss the Department of Public Service's proposed 2025 capital improvements budget and highlight some of the key projects we have planned. The Department of Public Service's proposed 2025 capital improvements budget totals $255.2 million, including $117.1 million in new funding and $138.1 million in carryover funds. These investments will support roadways, sidewalks, bikeways, bridges, and other vital infrastructure projects, all aimed at enhancing safety, mobility, and quality of life in neighborhoods across the city. Our guiding principles for developing the capital and budget include our public service mission, which is to deliver unparalleled public services in Columbus to enhance equitable mobility, safety, and quality of life. Public service focuses on capital projects that promote equitable access to jobs, schools, healthcare, and other essential city services through improved mobility. The department leads the planning, design, and construction of key infrastructure initiatives that align with Vision Zero principles, and these are aimed at reducing vehicle speeds and creating safer conditions for pedestrians, cyclists, motorists, and transit users alike. As in most years, a cornerstone of public services proposed capital budget is the $35.1 million investment combining new and carryover funding for the city's street resurfacing program. The Department of Public Service maintains approximately 5,700 lane miles of city roadways. The resurfacing program includes milling existing pavement and laying new asphalt, as well as performing partial and full-depth pavement repairs, upgrading ADA curb ramps, repairing curbs, and applying new pavement markings. With these projects, the department plans to resurface over 122 streets and construct over 328 ADA curb ramps across the city. The department is also planning to invest $1.6 million in crack sealing and slurry sealing to protect and extend the lifespan of city streets, reduce future repair costs, and provide smoother, safer driving conditions for all residents. A selection of streets scheduled for resurfacing as a part of these citywide projects include Go Down Road, Mosby Street, King Avenue, and Long Road. And of the $35.1 million allocated for resurfacing, $9.3 million will fund urban paving projects. And these are projects that are joint resurfacing efforts in partnership with the Ohio Department of Transportation. This year's capital budget proposal includes $3.4 million in new funding plus $5.9 million in carryover funds dedicated to our bridge rehabilitation program. Typical bridge rehabilitation work includes patching concrete surfaces, microsurfacing, painting, replacing expansion joint seals, and crack sealing. One of the bridge projects included in this year's capital budget allocates $4.4 million in new and carryover funds for the Front Street and Nationwide Boulevard Bridge over the railroad tunnel. This project will involve deck replacements, conversion of the bridge abutments to semi-integral design, painting of the superstructures, replacement of approach slabs, and joint repairs. Also included in the 2025 capital improvement budget proposal is $22.1 million for the Link Us initiative, and this is comprised of $13.5 million in new funding and $8.6 million in carryover funds. Link Us is Central Ohio's comprehensive mobility initiative designed to tackle growth challenges, improve affordability, and close opportunity gaps in our community. It achieves this by making significant investments in transit, sidewalks, bikeways, trails, and roadway improvements, creating a more connected, accessible, and equitable transportation network for all residents. One of the key projects within the Link Us initiative is the West Broad Street BRT betterments. This includes condition-based curb and sidewalk replacements along approximately 5 miles within Columbus, as well as the addition of a shared use path, separated bike lanes, street trees, and enhanced street lighting, creating a safer, more accessible, and welcoming environment for all users. Another key project is the Broad Street Trail, also known as the Capitol Trail, Phase 2 design. This phase initiates the design process to create a vital bikeway connection downtown linking South Washington Avenue to the Alum Creek Trail, enhancing safety, convenient, and sustainable transportation options for cyclists. Also included in this proposed capital improvements budget are several other key investments aimed at enhancing our community. The 2025 budget includes $18 million for the new South Outpost facility located at 2260 Lockbourne Road. This construction project involves the demolition of all existing structures and addressing any necessary hazardous material abatement on the site. The new facility will feature a modern office and locker room area, a garage for parking and storing city vehicles, including CNG vehicles, a salt barn, a new fuel island, a wash bay with an attached brine equipment area, covered material stockpile bays, and a sweeper dump area with covered dumpster. This investment will support more efficient city operations and help maintain safer, cleaner streets across our community. This budget proposal includes $2.4 million in new funding for the construction of the roadway improvements Leonard Avenue under the railroad bridge. The project will involve a full-depth reconstruction of the pavement under the bridge with curb, gutter, and storm drainage structures added to further enhance the area's drainage. Both sidewalks will be replaced, raised above the roadway, and a new sidewalk will be added on the south side of Leonard Avenue east of the bridge. Additionally, underpass lighting will be replaced and upgraded to improve visibility and safety for pedestrians. Also included is $2.9 million in construction and right-of-way acquisition for the roadway multimodal Mount Vernon Avenue Phase 1 project, which is leveraging $500,000 in grant funding from the Ohio Department of Transportation. Phase 1 will improve Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Mount Vernon Avenue in the King Lincoln Bronzeville neighborhood. Key upgrades include bike lanes on East Spring Street, separated bike lanes on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Mount Vernon Avenue, as well as floating bus islands and safety improvements, all within the existing curb lines. The project aims to reduce vehicle speeds and increase mobility options for residents, enhancing safety and accessibility for cyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. The 2025 budget proposal includes $1.6 million in construction funding for the State Route 161 I-71 to Cleveland Avenue Phase 2 project, leveraging $15.9 million from WRPC attributable funds and ODOT safety funds. Phase 2 will improve State Route 161 from Maple Canyon Avenue to Ambleside Drive with upgrades to side streets like Beechcroft Road and Tamarack Shannon Woods Boulevard. Key improvements include pedestrian and bike facilities, new traffic signals, pavement widening and resurfacing, raised medians on side streets, and installation of mini roundabouts. The shared use path will run from Maple Canyon Avenue to Ambleside Drive, enhancing safety and mobility for all users. Also included is $1.4 million for design, right-of-way, and utility relocation, leveraging $2 million in ODOT safety funds for the Roberts Road at Frizzell Road, Spindler Road intersection project. This project will reconfigure the intersections of Roberts Road, Frizzell Road, and Spindler Road by constructing 2 compact urban roundabouts. Key improvements include a shared use path from Brookford Drive to Willow Glen Road, sidewalks along Spindler Road to Brookmont Drive, curb, gutter, storm sewer, lighting, signage, and pavement markings for the roundabouts. These changes will improve safety and traffic flow while enhancing pedestrian and cyclist access. This budget proposal includes $11.9 million for the city's Vision Zero initiative, with $6.5 million in carryover funding and $5.4 million in new funding. The Vision Zero Columbus program is committed to eliminating crash-related fatalities and serious injuries on our streets while promoting safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for all. A sample of the Vision Zero projects included in this budget proposal are the pedestrian safety crosswalk enhancements 2023 Phase 2. This project focuses on upgrading and enhancing crosswalks at 14 locations across the city. Improvements include upgraded signage and striping, installation of pedestrian refuge islands, pedestrian-activated crossing beacons, and curb extensions. Some locations will require detailed drainage design and right-of-way acquisition. And while all locations will be designed under a single contract, they are expected to be split into 2 separate construction phases. Another project focused on Vision Zero is the roadway South High Street, Greenlawn Avenue to East Sycamore Street. And this project will involve reallocating roadway space to create 4 vehicular travel lanes and 2 protected bike lanes, improving safety by reducing traffic conflicts and providing a safer, more accessible route for both motorists and cyclists. The 2025 capital budget proposal includes $41.4 million in new and carryover funding for mobility and safety improvements, including sidewalks, bikeways, and shared use paths. Included in the mobility funds is $2 million in construction funding for the pedestrian safety Sunbury-Agler sidewalk project, leveraging an additional $400,000 from Safe Routes to Schools funding through ODOT. This project will add a sidewalk to the east side of Sunbury Road, install pedestrian push buttons at Sunbury Road and Agler Road, and add sidewalks on both sides of Cassidy Avenue, connecting to existing sidewalks to the north. Pedestrian push buttons will also be installed at Cassidy Avenue and Agler Road, all within the city of Columbus and Franklin County. The 2025 budget includes $1.3 million for design and right-of-way costs for the bikeway development Tussing Road Shared Use Path project from Bryce Road to Hines Road. This project will add a shared use path along the south side of Tussing Road, along with enhanced pedestrian crossings at Americana Parkway and Tussing Elementary School. Additionally, sidewalk will be added on the north side of Tussing Road, improving access to the enhanced crossings. And also within the 2025 capital improvement budget is $2.6 million for the construction of the pedestrian safety Hiawatha Park Drive, Silver Drive to Hudson Street project. This project includes pedestrian and bikeway improvements along Hiawatha Park Drive from its southern terminus at the intersection with Silver Drive, Velma Avenue, south of I-71, to East Hudson Street. A shared use path will be added along the east side of Hiawatha Park Drive throughout the entire project area, and sidewalk will be added on the west side where none currently exists. The 2025 capital improvements budget also includes $16.4 million in new and carryover funding for refuse collection facilities, vehicles, and containers to replace and update the division's fleet, which services 346,000 households each week. A portion of this equipment will be dedicated to supporting the Clean Neighborhoods initiative, aimed at addressing the persistent problem of illegal dumping in our communities. This map provides a visual representation of the key capital budget projects discussed during this presentation, pinpointing their specific locations throughout the city. To enhance understanding and facilitate better geographic orientation, the map also includes an overlay of the council district boundaries. There are projects planned in every district, highlighting a citywide investment in infrastructure and community improvements. Lastly, let's take a look ahead at the key priorities for the capital improvement program from 2026 to 2030. Major investments for the Department of Public Service are the Vision Zero initiative with $5.3 million annually and $26.5 million total. The resurfacing program with $20 million annually and $100 million total. Mobility funding for $6 million annually and $30 million total, and the bridge rehabilitation program for $3.4 million annually and $17 million total. Once again, I would like to thank council and the community for the opportunity to present the Public Service Proposed 2025 Capital Improvements Budget. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you for that, Madam Assistant Director. A lot of exciting projects in there. I know in particular one that I'm excited about is that Leonard Avenue underpass. As someone who has, my parents actually live on that side of town, so I drive under there pretty frequently. It is quite terrifying as it is. I think we just recently did some resurfacing and lighting, which was a huge improvement. But to see even more, I'm excited about that. One thing I wanted to highlight, because I think it is something that comes up quite often across the city, and I'm really excited to see it in this proposal, is the illegal dumping that you mentioned. Can you just give us a high-level overview of what that Clean Neighborhoods Initiative is and what that looks like?
Sure. As a part of the clean initiatives, we have installed cameras at various locations to catch people who are individuals who are performing these activities of illegal dumping to help mitigate those issues that we're seeing. We've also changed from the larger collection cans to smaller ones to prevent the illegal dumping. Those are a couple of things a part of that program, and just more monitoring.
Great, thank you for that, because I just think I know it's a critical thing that we see in some of our neighbors, particularly our neighborhoods with alleyways, and so I just wanted to highlight that particular program. Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank
She said
you.
to me, she said, I have a question. Like, I'm sure you do. You're the Transportation and Public Service Chair. So.
I am excited about lots of things in this proposal, especially the safety around Vision Zero, et cetera. There's one question that I have, and then I want to highlight. So I'll do the highlight first and then turn it over to the question. I just wanted to highlight for folks that we have an outpost on here, and I know that many times when people think about some of the city services, they're thinking about things like rec centers or, a police substation, et cetera, so they don't always understand what an outpost looks like, and I just wanted to paint a picture for folks real quick. So this particular outpost was an early 1900s, late 1800s school building that we inherited when we actually annexed a township into the city of Columbus. And so this particular outpost actually had a barn, like a wooden barn where we held some of our equipment, and it was broken into several times. This outpost also serviced, and I have a particular interest because this is my district, it serviced the southeast portion of the city. And so many times, because we didn't have sufficient space, folks would have to, our drivers would have to go up north to get more salt to come all the way back south, right? So when we think about the investments that we're making on the things that people can't see all the time, it's the things that you experience. It's the better service that we will provide to folks that also makes a better fiscal decision for us, because we're spending more time on gas, personnel, et cetera, when they have to make that extra trip up north. And then you're not getting the same type of service that you might get in other places because our facility isn't sufficient enough to service the area. And so I just wanted to highlight that for everyone, because it's not going to be something that everyone sees unless you drive by the outpost, but it's going to be certainly something that you feel in terms of services, which is why this investment is so important for residents. And I think from our perspective, as we look at the budget, just making a sound fiscal decision in investing in our facilities so that we are making better use of taxpayer dollars. So I just wanted to highlight that for everyone. So if you're driving around Lockbourne, you will see a shiny new facility instead of this old, which was once probably a beautiful schoolhouse, but is really not a sufficient outpost. Secondly, I want to talk about street resurfacing in particular, because I think a lot of the other projects on here, I'm also very excited about the Mount Vernon project, just because I know that has been a concern for many residents there. But in particular, one of the things I know folks care about a lot is street resurfacing. And so I know we named some streets in there, but I just want to make sure that remind folks about our street resurfacing package and what that looks like. So can you just talk about that a little bit, just because I don't want folks to get deterred by looking at specific streets that we named when we know we're talking about really more than 100 streets. So.
Yes, that's good point. Thank you. So I just highlighted a few areas throughout the city, but we usually put on 2, sometimes 3 resurfacing packages in a year, containing a lot of different streets. On this one in particular, we're looking in 2025 to 122 streets all over the city, as well as a part of that we're upgrading and maintaining the ADA curb ramps that are located throughout the city. And the one map that I showed earlier shows a bunch of those different locations, but the first package is usually around 15 million of the 20 million in new funding, and usually the second package is right around 5, sometimes more if there's a more carryover available. But yes, much more than the 4 streets I mentioned.
And just again, this is also testing my public service knowledge, but essentially streets get a score, which is how we determine which streets we're going to resurface in each one of those packages, correct?
Yep, we look at the pavement condition, that's the pavement condition rating. I probably could have figured that out, but we have a database with all of those. So we look at the ones that have the worst score and make them higher priority, so we're hitting those first. We're also looking at the daily traffic for how we're selecting those, any kind of street maintenance that's included. So if we're finding there's a section of road that's having a lot of cost with pothole repair or patching or needing crack sealing, that will be prioritized, which would also go into the pavement condition ratings. 311 calls, if you see something, call it in, we'll mark it down, and where we're getting a lot more calls on those will get a higher prioritization as well. So those are the biggest factors when we're trying to determine which streets to include on those packages.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to give that as a reminder to folks because I think that's something that we often get concerns about when we're talking to residents is how do we determine that? How much goes into that? Just so folks know, because I know we highlighted around the districts and those are some of those main thoroughaways in districts, but I also want folks to know that that also includes your street at some point, right? And those 311 calls do matter. And then the last point that I want to make is also, you saw some sidewalk projects in there. I just want to again remind folks that sidewalk projects, sometimes we align them with some of our major roadway projects that we're doing. We also work with developers when a development is coming in for them to include a sidewalk in their development project. And then we also, again, have the TSI. So I know that we've been talking a lot about filling the gaps of our sidewalks around the city. So again, this is not just another strategy, but there are many more strategies because I know that folks want more sidewalks. And so I just wanted to point that out because we did put, we highlighted some of the projects in here, but there are many more coming. So thank you. Those are my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to highlight something else. You said at the top of the meeting, and please feel free to jump in. The other biggest thing, of course, that we talk about when it comes to public service is sidewalks. And those are, very expensive depending on what type the conditions there. But if you could just talk a little bit about our sidewalks, how much we're investing this year, and then also broadly speak of, because I know that we have some identified, but what we are also investing from that transportation supportive infrastructure dollars. This was a part of Link Us. So when we talk about what the voters did this past November, it wasn't simply about buses. It was really about how do we transform our entire city, and from a mobility standpoint, it's not just about the bus, it's about also how you get to the bus. And so I just want to highlight that because I think that there are a lot of projects that are coming that you probably won't see in our capital budget because they're being supported by some other revenue source that the voters voted for. So if you could just speak to this sidewalk package that we have in this current budget, but then if you can, give us any insights as to what's coming with those transportation-supported infrastructure dollars through Link Us.
Sure. So with those TSA dollars, the transportation supportive infrastructure, we're looking and really focused at first mile, last mile when we're trying to connect to these corridors that have been identified as a part of that. With those dollars, we'll be doing a lot of those sidewalk projects and using it as another way to fund a lot of those much needed projects within the community. Just speaking to the sidewalks overall, the first step in the process is to, again, notify 311 so that requests can be tracked and logged. We definitely utilize those when we're going through and trying to fill gaps or fix problems. We have contracts where we're going out and fixing sidewalk if it just needs to be shaved down a little bit because it's lifted by a tree root or anything like that. So please call But yes, a part of development, we're including sidewalks. Private property owners can elect to build their own sidewalks if they choose. And through the capital projects, when it's appropriate with the roadway, we'll add the sidewalks in for more of those connections that we're looking for.
And Chair, I just wanted to add, so MORPC, which is the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, it's a mouthful to say, so it's MORPC. If folks go to that and just Google MORPC, TSI, TSI final projects, you can actually see a list. There's 90 projects that are within the region, and it's not just Columbus, right? So because our footprint with CODA is not just Columbus, but it's our neighboring municipalities, so those dollars go there as well, because those taxpayers also voted for more sidewalks, more trails, more connectivity. So you can actually go and you can see the 90 projects that that were in the final package. Every year, we will continue to have a package of TSI projects. So I just want to make sure that residents know that they can go, they can see what the projects are, and they can see how many dollars were allocated to those particular projects, to your point, Chair. So, and thank you. I love when you talk transportation and mobility. Look at that.
I try
Well,
where I can.
sidewalks.
A little
Picking up with
dangerous.
sidewalks. Those of us who were at last night's town hall wish y'all sidewalks people had been there, because sidewalks was one of the top things that recreation parks, sidewalks, that's all people wanted to talk about. So it really is important. It's not glamorous, but that's something that residents really, really care about. And it's hard for them to get the information about how that whole thing works. We could have a whole hearing just on sidewalks. It would probably have our best attendance.
Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Deakar. I know that a lot of advocacy, particularly on the west side of our city and some of our more further parts of the city. It's important for folks, when we talk about sidewalks, I know it sounds as simple as like, just put some concrete down and keep going. There's so much engineering that goes into it when we talk about water runoff and so many other things. So I will say to residents, even if you are slated to get a sidewalk, sometimes it may take a couple years because of how much goes into it. But also to remind folks that, we are a growing city, and our annexation policy is really what has gotten us here, that we have aggressively annexed the city. The city has grown. And when we annexed in parts of the city that was once either a village or a township, they didn't have sidewalks. And so really what we were doing is both trying to maintain what we have and also catch up, right? 223 square miles is a very, very large city. And so what I would say is, again, continue to let us know where these are. Do understand that there's prioritization, right? Our schools, seniors, walkability, all of these types of things go into it. But I will not probably be alive when we get there, but one day we will have a Columbus that has sidewalks on every part of it. Anyway, there is a question, and we will try to get some more information, but there is a Commissioner Robert Meter, one of our area commissioners, said that there was a sidewalk, I think, planned a couple years back that never got installed. So, Mr. Meter, I'm going to ask my team to engage with you to figure out what specific street, so we could try to get you some more information probably later on in the hearing. Speaking of the next, Councilman Bailey?
Yes, I just have one more question to the Assistant Director. In addition to the sidewalks, residents also want to know about alleys. And I don't know if that falls in with streets, or can you kind of address where that falls in, and if there's anything that you wanted to speak to about alleys?
Thank you, Councilmember. I'll jump in a little bit. Our alley program is a program that we fund through our operating budget. So we set aside certain commodity money to surface our alleys. We have, as you can imagine, a number of alleys throughout the city. We'll set by commodities. So we're talking about gravel, we're talking about asphalt, we're talking about like tar, stuff like that. We'll set aside that money in our operating budget, and we use internal staff to go out and resurface those alleys. So we do address that. We spend roughly around $600,000 for commodities, and then another $600,000 in personnel time to address those issues.
Thank you for that, Councilmember. In the next topic that we hear about a lot, recreation and parks. And so before we move on, I do want to shout out, because I am watching the live stream, Miss Eubanks and our friends on the South Side are very excited about that outpost. And so I think she's also going to be excited about some things she's going to hear in the Recreation and Parks' presentation as well. So with that, we'll kick it over to Craig Murphy with our Department of Recreation and Parks.
Good afternoon, Chair Bankston and members of council. It's great to be here with you all. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share what we think is a very exciting capital budget and future at Recreation and Parks. We're a very large land agency with a depth of capital responsibilities of keeping up to par with our facilities and our amenities, but also as we grow, it's important that we're inclusive of a community, city that's growing as well, so our amenities need to keep up. This year, our request for capital includes $45,280,000 with ongoing carryover of $82 million. What I want to focus on today is really talking about some of the guiding principles of Recreation and Parks. You know, in 2023, we became one of 200 agencies across the country out of 12,000 agencies like ours to become accredited. And what that means is that we're adhering to sort of national best standards. And that's also inclusive of our capital process. So we're very involved in the community, listening to the community's input and requests, as well as sort of our internal processes for prioritizing and developing our capital schedule. So we're really kind of proud of sort of where we are with that. As I mentioned earlier, we're a very large agency. We're 15,000 acres of parkland, 458 parks, 25 nature preserves, 230 paved miles of regional trail that we're a part of. We have 40 indoor facilities, and those include things like community centers and athletic complexes and rental facilities. We have 8 outdoor pools, 1 indoor aquatic center, 6 golf courses, and of course, hundreds of both athletic sports courts, athletic fields and sports courts and fields across Columbus. And we continue to grow as we need to. The other thing I wanted to mention is that in putting together our capital program, it's happened simultaneous to developing our 10-year vision plan, Playbook Columbus. Since last July, actually it was this week last year, we kicked off our process of planning our 10-year vision. And from the community so far, we held dozens of open houses, have done surveys, and we're compiling that report, which we'll have complete by the end of this year. And so far, what the community has told us is that there's a desire for robust, relevant, continued focus on wellness programs for folks of all ages, doing everything we can to protect nature and connect people with nature, making our parks welcoming and feel safe and places that they want to come back to, expanding our greenways. That's a consistent theme that we've heard year over year, is that people love our greenway system and they want to continue to be able to use those and use those in different locations. And then also from our staff perspective, being a leader from our operations is extraordinarily important for us. So not only is it enough for us to be an accredited agency, means that we're following best practices, but we want to be real leaders in the industry as well. This presentation, focuses on a number of sort of high-level projects. But before I jump into those, I want to talk about the dozens of projects or things that we do annually that are incorporated into this capital budget that don't always get the attention, but I wanted to mention them today. We spend about $1 million a year on our sports courts resurfacing, our walkways, parking lot replacement. About $700,000 a year on replacing playgrounds. We have about 175 playgrounds in our system, and so every year we're replacing new systems across Columbus. We spend about $600,000 to $800,000 annually on our roof replacement program, $1 million for park maintenance equipment such as mowers and vehicles, and trailer replacements. We'll spend over $1 million this year on multiple HVAC improvements. And the reason this is important is that Sustainable Columbus has a goal of, across Columbus, internally here, that we have a 25% reduction in our use of energy as a city. And Columbus Recreation Parks 5 years ago started on this journey towards fixing some of our facilities. And right now, based on that investment that we've made in replacing equipment, sort of the integration materials and the controls aspects, we've already seen a 25% reduction in our portfolio of facilities. We're also trying to close the gap on facilities that do not have air conditioning. We had 8 of those buildings, and we're down now to 6. We replaced 2. We added 2 air conditioning systems last year. Those are very expensive endeavors, very complex, because in a lot of cases, those buildings were not designed for it, so we have to sort of get the engineering right on that. And over the next 5 years, our goal is to replace and close the gap and add AC in those locations. We'll invest over $5 million in what I'll call park makeover projects. That's including Hans, Helsel, Willow Creek Park, Joan Park will begin planning in. North Bank Park has some improvements planned, as well as Hayden Park over by Shepherd Library. We have new park development in the Mid-East at Mason Run Park, and we'll invest, as we do every year, $850,000 in the installation of street trees across Columbus. And we also budget for parkland acquisitions. So when we look at what's on the screen right now, this really focuses on 4 large buckets of investment, and these are sort of the highlighted projects across Columbus. The first, so parks, community centers, aquatics, greenways, those are the 4 big topic areas that I wanted to share in our 2025 budget. This year, we'll be requesting $3.6 million to start the construction at West Case Park. And this is an important park for us because in the northwest part of Columbus, we have a shortage of park space. And this is an area where the community came together. OSU was selling their sheep farm at the time, back in 2018. And the community advocated on that, and we met with multiple civic associations who all sort of united and really pressed us to purchase this property, which we did. And we've gone through a design process with them. We've also partnering with the Columbus Library, and the library will be adding a facility there at the park. We'll sell off a portion of the property so that they can build a new library because they had a gap in that service area. We'll also include a north forestry zone so that our forestry staff have a place to operate there and sort of reduce the drive time from South Columbus to that side of town. Secondly, I wanted to talk about McCoy Park. This is a 10-acre park that we had, and we just partnered with the Department of Water and Power to extend that facility, that park to become a 20-acre park. And so this is a partnership with another department to find creative ways to grow as a park, but also as an important utility amenity that's needed in order to reduce some flooding in that area. This will have a community park aspect to it, but it'll also be a specialty park in the sense that the splash pad, the playground, the sports field will all be will be an ADA therapeutic recreation focus. So it'll have aspects for the community that live there, as well as for specialty use within our portfolio of recreation services. Again, this is another area that became to our attention because the Southwest Area Commission said they don't have enough in their area. They may have Berliner, which is one of the largest sports complexes in the country, but they didn't have a park that they called their own. And so Willow Creek became a priority for us to renovate, as well as the acquisition of this property. And I'll also mention that the family that owned this property had owned the property for maybe 80 years or so. They had offers that were higher than the offer that the city made. But the family chose to go with our offer because they wanted to leave behind a legacy for the community, which is the positive impact of the park. So on another park project I wanted to talk about is our 62-acre community sports park at Kilbourne Run. Again, this is a property we purchased in 2018, and we're requesting $1 million for completing the roundabout portion of the entry right off Westerville Road. So that'll alleviate a lot of traffic for this new facility, which will be very state-of-the-art, a stadium, a championship stadium, 16 athletic fields. Very exciting for the community, open to both our sports programming, but as well as for the community itself. Next, I just wanted to run through a few things about our community center renovations. The Beatty Community Center here on the Near East Side, we're requesting $300,000. There was a fire there last year, and so we are putting that building back together again. And as we're doing that, we decided to think a little bit differently and test an idea out of making this a teen-centric center. And so very sort of entrepreneurial aspects of it. And our team is very excited to get this project going and have kids occupy the space and kind of have an ownership model to the building. So that's a very different approach than we've taken in other places. And during the day, while the kids are in school, we're hoping to have this open to the community, so it really serves a dual purpose, a lot like we did with the Fran Ryan Center. On another community center project is the Sullivan Gardens Community Center. This is $1.7 million that we're requesting for interior renovations. This will complement the work we've already done exterior to the building, as well as to the athletic field we want to build right next door. Moving on to the sort of third bucket, and this is the big one that everyone's excited to hear about, and those are our pools, or our aquatics facilities. We're requesting $3 million to get the initial funding to get started with the long lead time purchases for Tuttle Pool. This is an environment with all the things going on that makes it very difficult to sort of nail down pricing. And so the ability to acquire things now is going to help us tremendously. Our goal is to start construction on Tuttle Pool at the end of next swim season. We're also requesting $3 million for sort of our final funds for Marion Franklin Pool, which is currently in swim season right now. It'll, when it closes in September, we will begin the demolition and construction process with the goal of reopening next year. The reason why these two projects are so important is that it represents sort of the completion of our portfolio of renovations and replacement. So it's pretty extraordinary within a 15-year period to have all of our pools repaired and replaced, and we all, it gives us a long life cycle for our next round of pools, and begins to allow us to focus on some other things such as the indoor aquatic center, as well as how can we grow our outdoor pool model. Lastly, I wanted to just highlight as far as the 2025 budget, we're requesting $1 million for the Big Walnut Trail from Refugee Road to East Main. This will be a 3.5-mile stretch of paved greenway, and this is part of a 10-mile greenway program that we have mapped out on the far west side. All of which will be probably complete within the next 5 to 7 years. We're also looking to advance the Linden Green Line and the Eastmore Green Line as well. A number of projects, I talked about some of these already, but when we talk about McCoy Park, this is so for when we look at the next 5 to 6 years, and from a budgeting perspective, how do we keep the momentum going, and what do we see as our future with respect to these projects in this budget? So we expect to see McCoy Park Phase 2 begin in the coming years. That's probably about a $10 million project because it incorporates a facility, and we'll be looking to relocate our therapeutic recreation programming to that location. Mason Run Park, Willow Creek Park, North Star Park is our along the Alum Creek corridor. We'll be looking to do more installations along that system. Westland reforestation, the tree canopy here in Columbus is a concern of ours, and we know that we're not going to reach 40% canopy just by doing street trees. So we're targeting certain locations where we can plant 2,000 to 3,000 trees in a reforestation effort. We've already done that on the south side where it has a really low canopy, and we are looking to do that again far west. Marion Franklin Community Center, we have significant interior and exterior renovations planned for that site. The Northeast Indoor Aquatics Facility is this is an emerging development, a design that we're working with the community on, as well as the schools. We see 3 new pools that are indoor at this facility in the coming years, and we'll be back with more details on that. It's a very exciting, very important project. For a city our size, we should have 4 indoor pools. Right now we have 1. So we really need to be growing that system, and there's so much pressure right now from the community around a lack of swim space and a lack of swimming opportunities, lack of opportunities to learn. We have a lot of goals with this and a lot to share out in the coming months on that. Splash pad construction plans, we're looking at Woodward, as well as replacing something at Dodge and a renovation at Barnett. The Linden Green Line, as many of you know, is a 7-mile project that will run right through the center of our city. We received some federal funds. We'll have Linkus dollars in this, as well as some matching dollars of capital in the coming years. The Eastmore Green Line, I think it's a 3-mile park system, a linear park system in the Mideast. And as I mentioned earlier, the Big Walnut Trail will be 10 miles plus, connecting Three Creeks Park to Hoover Reservoir. So it's pretty unique timing and a big time for us as a park agency. And our map just shows, again, we have hundreds of projects because a lot of these things I talked about have 7 to 20 different locations, underneath of any of these topics, particularly with playgrounds and hard surfaces and roof repairs and tree program and all those things. So, but this gives you a high-level understanding of sort of where we are today and where we'll be over the next 5 to 10 years. With that, that concludes my presentation. If there's any questions, I'm happy to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I'm sure there will be. I just want to highlight one thing, particularly around our pools and our current facilities. As the city continues to grow, we know that there are pockets and deserts, if you will, of these types of facilities. But I just want to point out that I believe that equity is also making sure that we are investing in our current assets. In order for us to spread our footprint or grow our footprint, we have to first take care of the current footprint that we have. And so that philosophy, particularly around every single pool being redone before we just start building great new ones, I just want to commend you all on that philosophy and taking that approach. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
I just had one question. You mentioned, what was the number of recreation centers that don't have air conditioning? Did you say 8?
There
or
were
6?
8. We've added air conditioning in 2 of those this year, and so there's 6 remaining.
Are you in a position to name those off the top of your head here?
I remember some of them.
How about the 2 that got it this year?
I'm sorry?
How about the 2 that air conditioning was added?
Oh,
those
sure.
2?
It was at Holton Community Center and Howard Community Center.
Okay.
I know that we're looking at probably Schiller and Barrick Community Centers as the next 2 that we want to do.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
Well, needless to say, I have something to say about rec parks. I mean, I do call this the fun committee, but it's really a quality of life committee.
Yeah.
I actually grew up in a town that did not have a recreation center, and we had one park, and it was on the opposite side of town from where I lived. So I know what it's like from going from childhood to live in a place where you don't have access. And then later as an adult, where I raised my daughter, didn't have a recreation center. Park was on the opposite side of town. And people of all ages need places to go for recreation, to connect with nature. It improves the quality of life for those people participating, but just living in a place where you've got a park and you've got trees and everything. It improves the quality of everyone's life. And so quite often I hear people refer to rec and parks as being kind of frivolous. And well, and that's an area where we can make cuts because that's not important. It is important. And especially now as we are such a big growing city, for us to not have a robust rec and park would actually be a horrible thing. We wouldn't be the city that we are without making these investments. And what was lifted up today were just the highlights, the ones that we decided were the big ones that people could grasp, understand. There's so many other things that are out there that are in the works that we're looking for, but we'd be here all day. And while Craig and I could talk rec and park all day, I'm sure the rest of the viewers would not want to be spending their whole afternoon talking about that. So I just want people to know that Rec and Park is always working on how we can be better at what we're doing and how we can impact more people in a positive way. So don't look at that list and think that's all we're doing. We're doing a lot more. And some of the things we're working on we can't say anything about yet because they're not a done deal. So don't think that those are the only things we're working on. We're working on a lot of stuff.
Thank you, Chair. It is a good reminder, I think, as a latchkey kid who often went to the rec center before, after school, or in the summertime and rode my bike there. I think I definitely value our rec centers, and I think y'all have been doing God's work in terms of not just having the same old plan, right? But thinking about like what are our other community assets, building pools next to parks and next to schools, and really making it a campus where it really makes it feel like the center of a community for folks. One question I have going back to pools, and I know that this is a hot topic. First of all, I'm very excited about the Marion Franklin pool. I'm excited about the especially again thinking about the South Side and revitalizing some of those assets that we've had on the South Side that are highly utilized by our community there and our residents there. I used to live just 7 minutes away from a pool, and that was the Livermore pool that was closed. And I mourn it all the time because from where I live, or even on the Mid-East side, you'd have to go. Closest pool to me would be Driving Park, right? But then if you live on the Mid-East or further out, you have to come way far to go to a public pool. So I'm just thinking, I know we have a splash pad at Barnett that we're making some repairs to improve that part, or to maybe even expand it. But when do we make that decision between like a splash pad or a pool, or is the thought that we do the splash pad as kind of an interim with an idea of like, in a longer term that might become a pool site, or there might be a pool coming to some of those areas where, as Councilmember Bankston talked about, there might be a desert of a pool facility for them during the summer.
Thank you for the question, Councilmember. We did a study in 2023 that looked at like a 20-year view of where we should be growing from a pool perspective. While the splash pads are incredibly important because A, they're fun, but also they cool you down. It's a great amenity in an area. And we look at those as like, can we add that to a park when we're developing a park, or can we go back and add it? It's a nice to have, but it's not going to replace the need to teach people to swim. And that to us is like the most critical thing. And when we went out to the community in 2023, their feedback was that swimming is a life skill, and we want more pools for that reason. So we're very focused on the pool component, and we know sort of where the gaps are in the city, sort of southeast, southwest, and north. So as we look to grow, we know sort of target areas where we would grow, and we're always thinking about community centers and pools and how can we grow and where can we find land and how can we do that. So it's very much on our minds. It's constantly, but I'd say, the swimming component, because we can teach people to get comfortable in water, is our primary priority.
No, and I appreciate that. And I will say what I know that we don't often talk about, but when we think about, especially in Black and brown communities, they don't always have the accessibility to things like swimming. I mean, this is actually shocking to say, but I'm a Caribbean kid and my people came from an island and I am not a swimmer. I respect the water. I will still like scuba dive and get on or not scuba dive, snorkel and get on a boat, but I respect my limits. And, I think my kids learned how to swim. I mean, this was paramount to me to ensure that they knew how to swim, and they learned how to swim at the aquatic center and at Tuttle Pool during the summertime where we teach swim classes. And so, I think to your point, I mean, when I think about my district, we have the most Black families on the southeast portion of the city, which is essentially the swath of District 8, right, is that portion. And so ensuring that they have accessibility and that you can take a bus to a pool, right? Especially as a kid. I mean, I could ride my bike there. I could walk there, right? And so I just think about our communities where, if you live in Berwick, Berwyn, Eastmore, Fairmore, you'd have to take a bus to get all the way to Driving Park. So just thinking about that is something certainly that when I, again, talk to residents and think about it, especially as the temperatures continue to rise and we have hotter and hotter summers, this is a way that our kiddos can, cool off. This is a way that our residents can have a place to go to fill those critical hours, right? And when it's a super hot day, you don't want to go to that playground. You want to go to that pool. And so just continuing to think about that and partnering with you all to ensure that we're getting to those places, and we're getting those places quicker for all the reasons that we just talked about. I think, and again, I know this is something that the department is thinking about, and I think to council members' point, we don't always show our cards because we don't want folks to get super excited about something that, might have its challenges in getting into the line. But it's certainly something that I think I hear from residents all the time and want to ensure that we're working towards those goals. So
I very much appreciate your comments. And I'll tell you, in our Playbook Columbus process of developing our 10-year vision plan, the number one thing is aquatics, or it's access to water. And that could be also, how do we open up, how do we do things more on the rivers, and how do we do more things on the reservoirs? So there's lots of different ways to think about it. But that fact that we didn't see it coming, the demand is growing as a lot of the private pools and other communities are closing, it's putting even additional pressure on us. And, we're prepared to do it. One of the things I want to go back to, the priority is learning to swim or be comfortable in water, is that we'll be piloting a program this fall with our aquatic staff to begin teaching third grade classes as almost like a rec program or a gym program to come to the aquatic center to learn to swim, partnering with some of the early adopters in the school system. So more of that to come, but it's a good sign of how we're thinking differently, taking time at our aquatic center when there's very low attendance and trying to fuse people in during that time, young people in, to teach them to swim.
Well, and thank you for highlighting that, because I think that's something that residents don't know. It's out of the box thinking, and that's what other folks do, right? If you don't have a pool in your school, that you can take that field trip to go out, and it's just so critical for them, and it's fun, right? It's something that's fun, especially for that, kids, I think, in our district don't have the opportunity, right? We don't have schools with pools. We don't have those amenities. And so when we can partner together to say we have these amenities and how do we continue to provide that for folks, that's key. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. And I will say recreation and parks absolutely is essential quality of life infrastructure for our community. But I remind folks, too, when we talk about our rec centers, parks, and pools, it's also the hardest thing because it doesn't just have capital implications, it has operating costs implications, too. Yeah. And so when we talk about that growth and talk about that expansion, it sounds easy to build something, but then it has to be staffed as well. So you all are balancing quite a lot over there. So thank you for that. We will now move on to the Department of Public Safety. And with us, we have Ms. Tricia Wenzel with the department. I'll turn it over to you.
Chair Bingston, members of council, thank you for the opportunity to present Public Safety's proposed 2025 capital improvement budget to you today. On the screen, you'll see a summary of the projects that are included in our proposed budget, along with the amounts that we're budgeting for those projects. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on future slides on these projects. The first is for the police records management system. $2 million is budgeted for that. Then we have police facility renovations, $1.932 million. Our Easton area police substation, $14 million is budgeted for that. And then we have $15 million budgeted for fire apparatus, split evenly between medics, platform ladders, and engines. And then finally, for fire facility renovations, $1.518 million is budgeted for that. So the records management system, just for those who aren't familiar, that's basically a software system that helps manage, store, retrieve, and analyze information to help our officers out in the field, as well as those who are back at headquarters investigating and solving crimes. Our new records management system will address a long-standing need while complementing the implementation of our case management system. And our lack of a modern records management system has stymied efforts to implement modern data-driven approaches to policing, and those data-driven approaches are a priority of Chief Bryant. Multiple independent external evaluations have recommended that we make it a priority to develop a robust system for data collection and analysis. A modern RMS is a fundamental component of such an integrated system. And again, $2 million is included in our proposed budget for that system. Next, we have something that we contribute towards annually is maintaining our facilities. We have facilities that were built in the 1950s and 1960s, so it's important that we're continually looking at those facilities and providing funding to maintain those critical assets, while also ensuring the health and safety of our first responders and adapting to the needs of our diverse workforce. On the police side and on the fire side, we have headquarters buildings and training academies. For the Division of Police, we also have the heliport located over on the west side and 19 substations. On the fire side, we have 35 fire stations, and we're currently building our 36th. On the police side, we have renovation funding proposed for $1.932 million, as I previously mentioned. I'm going to list some projects that we're planning to cover with that, but these are subject to change. There could always be something that more critical that comes up during the year. So we're planning to fund repairs to our indoor shooting range over on McKinley Avenue, repairs to our entrance gate, and our K-9 unit training garage. We'll also have some money for any unplanned and emergency projects that come up throughout the year, such as a roof failure or anything else that might go wrong and need to be quickly addressed. On the fire side, again, that's $1.518 million in funding. We're planning some fencing projects at stations 4, 7, 13, 19, and 20. At Fire Station 8, we're planning some renovations to our female facilities. Back in 1950s and 1960s, when we built these fire stations, there weren't very many female firefighters. They weren't necessarily considered in the planning for those building designs. And it's important that those female firefighters have access to the same quality of facilities as the male firefighters. So we've been going around over the past few years and addressing those station by station, and now we're going to be focusing on Fire Station 8. We're also doing parking lot repair and replacement at these stations, and retention pond and site drainage remediation, along with roof repairs at Fire Station 18, and again, any unplanned or emergency projects that may come up throughout the year. You may have seen some coverage in the news last night on our Easton area police substation. It's going to replace our current substation 6 at 5030 Ulrey Road. The current substation was built in 1974. It's out of date and it's too small to serve our current needs. This is a rapidly growing area of our city, and this new substation will be more centrally located and more efficient for our patrol officers. And it's also going to be a place for the community where community members can meet with detectives, hold block watch meetings, and collaborate with law enforcement. Easton Town Center is providing the land for this new substation, and it will be located at the corner of Sunbury Road and Easton Way. We're currently in the design phase for that project, which is expected to be completed in November. Construction will then last approximately 12 months. And it's important to point out that while the substation will be near Easton, it will not solely serve Easton. It will serve the entire 6th precinct. And the architect on that project is Mull and Weithman. On my next slide, I have an artist's rendering of what that police substation may look like, but this is subject to change as we move through the design process. Fire apparatus, I just wanted to reiterate the statement from Mayor Ginther showing that this is a big priority for the administration to make sure we're up to date on our fire apparatus. A couple of things to note from that statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you today, but we deal with inflation and some pretty significant supply chain delays with our apparatus. It can take 2 to 3 years after we place an order to have that apparatus delivered and on the street. So that's something that we need to stay on top of and continually evaluate with our funding and our planning. As I mentioned earlier, we have $15 million proposed in our capital improvement budget for our apparatus, and it's split evenly between medics, platform ladders, and engines. And just to give an idea of what we're looking at when we buy that apparatus, I have the chart in blue showing the useful life as a frontline vehicle for each of those types of apparatus, which would be when it's assigned to a station and out taking daily runs. And then beyond that, once it's placed in reserve, the additional number of years we would hope to get out of that. Reserve vehicles are often used if a vehicle is in with fleet for repairs. We might take one of our extra units and temporarily assign it to a station. So for medics, we would expect to have those in frontline service for 4 years and then in reserve for 2. Platform ladders, 12, and then 3 in reserve, and engines, 8, and then 2 in reserve. We currently have apparatus on the streets that is 21 years old, I believe. So we're stretching as long as we can, but ideally we want to meet that useful life. My next slide kind of shows a representation of where our projects, our planned projects, are located throughout the city. A lot of those dots represent our police and fire facilities where we have renovation projects planned. And then you can also see up in that northeast area where the Easton Police Substation will be. And then we have several projects that are more of a citywide example, the police records management system, of course, unplanned emergency facility renovations, and our fire apparatus. And then I have my contact information up on the screen for anybody who has questions or needs additional information. If I'm not able to address your question today, or if you're kind of digesting this information and something comes up, feel free to reach out anytime and we'll get you the information that you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director Wenzel. Any questions from my colleagues? All right, seeing none. Again, I think when it comes to public safety, pretty straightforward stuff, but it's really about making sure that our officers, our firefighters, our medics have the equipment that they need to respond in a way for our residents and also accommodate our continuing growth. So thank you for that. Next, we will have a presentation from Deputy Director Bill Webster in our Department of Development, my partner in good that I get to work with on a daily basis. So Deputy Director, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Bankston and members of council for the opportunity on behalf of Director Stevens to present the Department of Development's 2025 capital budget. I got to take a moment and digress for a second. I always enjoy this particular hearing each year, and I've done a lot of these over the years. So the goal of the Department of Development is to create economic opportunities, create opportunities in our neighborhoods for good quality housing, affordable housing for folks to live in, quality jobs that pay a good wage that people are able to raise their families on. And I'm really appreciative of the role that each of my colleagues and their departments play in the impact of our ability to accomplish those goals. When I listen to these projects, the quality of life, the activities that take place are really important to our mission. So again, I always find it fascinating to listen to the presentations. All right, let's jump into the numbers here. So our budget consists of 71 million in new funding for 2025 and approximately 127 million in carryover from what will be the 24 capital budgets and the bond sale that we're waiting on, for a total of $198 million. Now, looking at the new money, 50 million of our 71 million, or 70%, is dedicated to our primary strategy, and that is affordable housing development. This funding represents investments in projects providing affordable housing for families, as well as seniors and individuals experiencing homelessness, and as well as home ownership for middle income and first-time home buyers. Our principles have remained the same for a number of years now. We are in a multi-year strategy to develop affordable housing, and it is built around build, invest, preserve, and include. This four-pronged strategy helps us to achieve our goals and is the foundation of our capital planning. From our perspective, we need to build more housing at all price points. We talked about this at the town hall meeting. We believe that residents should have the ability to live in the neighborhood they want to live in at a price point that is good for them. We need to invest in affordable housing for folks that are making less than $50,000 annually. We need to preserve our existing housing stock, and our capital budget includes funding that we'll talk about for housing preservation, critical home repair, that's designed specifically to keep people in their homes by making the necessary improvements to keep that home warm, safe, and dry. And then lastly, we need to build housing that includes everyone that needs access, no one left out. These are the key components to our investment guidelines. All right, looking at some of our specifics here, 50 million is planned for projects in the coming year for affordable housing. This is new affordable rental units, new affordable home ownership, preservation of our existing home ownership, and then support again of those experiencing recent homelessness. Specifically, we have $47.2 million. This is mostly allocated to our rental program and new construction, single-family, multifamily type housing, et cetera. $2 million for housing preservation, $800,000 for critical home repair. So I'll take a moment and back up. Housing preservation and critical home repair, these are those programs that we use with individual homeowners to make sure that we're able to make updates to the home, to keep the home inhabitable, keep folks in their homes, keep the home safe. These one of our key programs each year that we want to continue to get the word out about. We also have the North Market Redevelopment Project, otherwise known as Merchant Tower. We have $13 million that will be going as the second installment to that project. Just a reminder, this project includes a total of $37 million in city funding over a 3-year period to leverage $430 million in private investment. During construction, we're estimating approximately 1,900 jobs created with this project. We're also proposing $6 million for capital grants to our nonprofit partners to make facility improvements. Our nonprofit partners help us to expand our outreach into the community. The majority of these nonprofit investments are going to be, again, facility improvements to their existing space to help them to serve more efficiently, provide more services, but again, it's to their existing space. We do have a couple of projects that included in this list that are a little bit more unique, one of them being the Poindexter Museum. This is the second round of funding for the Poindexter project, and then there's funding to expand with the Columbus Historical Society. All right. Looking out to 2026 through 2030, we're still looking to invest large in our affordable housing program. We are working closely at the possibility of being able to get approval for approximately $500 million more in affordable housing funds that can be invested into our neighborhood. Strategic acquisition in support of programs like Linkus, supportive programs around economic developments and our public-private partnerships. We want to start investing aggressively in the acquisition of key real estate sites along our corridors and within our neighborhoods that we feel we can turn around and use in RFPs to help to stimulate investment in some of these key areas. We want to work closely with the Columbus-Franklin County Finance Authority to support urban redevelopments and small-scale neighborhood public improvements. We recently invested $1 million in what we're referring to as our small 3P program. These are working with smaller developers, sometimes newer developers, but these are those projects that are oftentimes in our more urban environments where our developers are encompassing expenses that come with urban redevelopments. They're not green site developments. They're working with older infrastructure. They're working with older buildings. We want to be able to provide gap funding in the way of grants to help facilitate some of these more urban renewal type projects.
Assistant Director, real quick, you said 3P. People may not know what that means.
Oh,
Can you
my
just-
apologies.
It's okay.
Public-private partnership. I've been using 3P for so long, I don't even think about it anymore. Yes, public-private partnerships are a key component to our investment strategy, whether it's working with nonprofits that are building affordable housing, or it's working with private developers that are building commercial, et cetera. The way that we use our money is gap financing. We're not paying the majority of any project, but what we find is we're able to use our capital dollars to fill those gaps between their capital stack of private funding, equity, et cetera. That creates the partnership that achieves our goals. All right, so I've been dreading this slide, and Councilmember Bankston knows I'm dreading this slide because I'm terribly colorblind. So what I'm going to tell you is that there are stars on there of different colors representing where our projects with the $71 million in new money, they are largely centrally located, but if you look there, we're beginning to push outward into other districts. As we get further along in our affordable housing, we're coming across increasing opportunities in our pay-as-we-grow districts, which are edge city type projects, as well as the outer tier of the inner ring of neighborhoods. We're really beginning to develop a lot of opportunities to invest affordable housing funds, but this represents the allocation with the $71 million. And then I'm going to leave you with a few elevations here. The first one is the Lofts on Long. This is the former YMCA building here in downtown. We are working with Woda Cooper to develop this into housing projects. I'm noting, because of our investment in Merchant Tower, what the elevation looks like there. And then one of our newer project that's a little further out, our Taylor Station project. This is a point in time photograph of the construction that's coming along there. So we're trying to work to create a diverse set of housing opportunities and projects, living opportunities and job creation opportunities for our residents. Thank you.
Deputy Director, going back to that slide, I think when some folks look at it, it looks like there's a lot of concentration of investment, particularly around affordable housing. Would you say that part of that is because our affordable housing strategy is for the creation of affordable units in those areas of the city that are becoming more expensive? Is that why you would see that high concentration closer to downtown, where it is more expensive, one, to build, but also it is becoming more expensive for folks to purchase homes and to rent?
Councilmember Bankston, absolutely. The resurgence of folks who want to live a more urban life, we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of opportunities for housing in our central city neighborhoods where folks can take advantage of transit, they can take advantage of cultural amenities that are available to them. So we're trying to take advantage of opportunities where we can create this housing in areas that help to support and create the urban redevelopment lifestyle that we feel people are asking for.
Yeah, so I just wanted to just make sure I pointed it out for folks, because I think, the way that we use those dollars is in public-private partnerships in many cases. It sounds like a lot of money, $250 million, But if you were to go construct full projects by themselves, we would not get as many units as we have gotten out of our bond dollars. And so where we have those projects that are going up in those much more desirable neighborhoods, we have to make sure that we're getting and capturing affordability in those neighborhoods as well. The other thing I did want to point out too about the 3P program, when we talk about those smaller and mid-sized developers, I'm always focused on we have to meet this moment. We have to build more housing at all price points. But the question we have to also ask ourselves is, who is going to also share in the city's success in building? And so when we talk about those smaller developers, those minority developers, those women developers, this 3P program is really about helping them alleviate some of the requirements that we put on them that can make or break a project. So when we think about, say, a twoplex or a fourplex going in, we're going to require you to probably replace the sidewalk. We're going to require you to probably upgrade the electrical. Those are all things that we want in our neighborhoods. But for some of these smaller developers, that makes or breaks a project, right? The larger developers can absorb that. Many times they already plan for it. So I just want to commend that program in particular, because if we talk about building the city of tomorrow and we talk about equity, it's not just simply about folks being able to live in the city. We have to have equity in who is building the city of tomorrow as well. I see some questions from my colleagues, so I'll turn it over to them.
I have two questions, actually, and one, I'll start with kind of the alignment of what Councilmember Bankston was just sharing. I think that for the public, we've gotten criticism from when we talk about land acquisition, and what does that look like? And so can you help to share what our philosophy is around why we would be acquiring land in specific neighborhoods or around the city? What is the thought behind that? Just because I'm not sure that we've had a good open conversation around why we do that and why we would want to do that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Councilmember Barossa de Padilla, it's a really good question, and you're absolutely right. So the reason why we are beginning to do research and we want to put together a plan around real estate acquisition is that, first and foremost, we believe that site control in certain situations is very important. When we want to ensure mixed-use developments that are creating affordability, creating jobs, oftentimes there are locations where we believe that we can invest and that project will have a spin-off impact and create other investment as a result of us investing there. So we're trying to look for the sites that we believe we can have that strategic impact. Also, as we're building out our corridors for rapid transit, et cetera, we want to make sure we're creating opportunities for where the larger station stops. We want to be mindful about making sure that we're creating an opportunity where development can happen in a planned way that is sustainable. We don't want to be in a situation where we don't have what we need to be successful in our neighborhoods. And land acquisition, strategic, not out buying everything. We can't afford to do that. But being strategic and buying key parcels really can make a difference to ensuring that the kind of development that we as a city want to see happening takes place.
Well, and I want to illustrate that point because I know I talk a lot about where I live because I am a resident, right? And I live in the neighborhood that I grew up in where, I grew up down the street from a strip club and an adult bookstore that now, by the way, I share this often, is now a child care center. So we've gone 360 on that particular location. But I think about, the proliferation of car dealerships or tire shops or other things that neighborhoods don't want because development happens to them. And I think especially around the Link-Us corridors where we are driving our density, we want the neighborhood to be in our partners and to be intentional about what that looks like, right? That we do have both living spaces and amenities. We do have a little bodega, a little corner store where you can buy fresh food, that it can be a daycare center, that it can be those things that we want. And yes, we still need to buy cars, and yes, we still need to fix those cars, but being more intentional about what is in those areas. And, I live along that Main Street corridor, and when I think about and have conversations with my neighbors or some of our stakeholders in that neighborhood, they want certain things, and without having proper land acquisition, without us being able to say, what does this look like, and how are we attracting the kind of developers that are going to, whether, to Councilmember Bankston's point, that are going to be able to both benefit, that are going to have the mindset of thinking about how do we, or we can be a partner with them in developing something that is a win-win for everyone. And I think we need to have a better conversation with folks about what that looks like, because I think that without dialogue, people create their own narrative, and that it becomes truth. And so I know that we've gotten, in some of the acquisitions that we've currently made, we've gotten some feedback about that. And so I just wanted to take this opportunity to start that conversation. We'll continue to have that, but I wanted folks to see that the things that you care about, we care about those things too. And we want to ensure that we're partnering with communities so that they can get the things that they want in their neighborhoods and the things that they're asking for. So the development doesn't happen to them, but they're really part of that process. My second question is we had critical home repair on that list. And so can you talk a little bit about that $800,000? Who are the entities that do that critical home repair? Are we giving that to specific organizations or agencies? And then how can our residents tap into those programs?
Absolutely, Councilmember Rossini Padilla. And going back to your last comment, I agree with you completely. The conversations, we've gotten them started. Let's delve deeper into them, and I think that'll produce a really good result for us all. Critical home repair. So critical home repair is designed, and it typically gets its most use during the winter months. So when furnaces go out, hot water tanks go out, components to the house that are just that critical to the house being livable. That's what these grant funds are for. The way it works is that our Division of Housing has the Housing Preservation Team. They have an application intake, and anyone who would want more information can contact our Housing Division, and they'll get routed to them. Typically what we do is we have contractors that we have put through an RFP process and received bids to provide services, electrical services, plumbing services, et cetera, so that way they are ready to go, and an applicant can make an application to us. We can award them money for the repair, and then we can work with the homeowner to assign it to one of our contractors that are on contract to get the work done as quickly as possible.
And I also want to mention that our home repair program is a lower bar entry. And the reason that I point that out is that, there are other organizations that sometimes they have federal funds that come through, which then make it a little bit harder for them to access, just because we know that some of those income qualifications are a little out of date for what folks might make today, right? When you look at the poverty line, et cetera, would you say that's true in terms of the lower bar entry, or are there still some of those stipulations put on those dollars?
No, I would say that's true. And we've converted these, a lot of these programs began years ago using federal dollars that required certain stipulations and regs, and we've converted these programs completely over to capital, which allows us to be much more flexible with being able to make grants to the homeowners. And that was the reason of using capital versus federal dollars.
Yeah, and especially for our older adults who, you might be getting different sources of income, whether that's a 401k or a pension, or you're getting all of this. And, we had folks who are you're making $1,700 a month, you still might have a mortgage payment or other payments or other debt that you're paying off, and then you don't qualify for those programs. And we know the $1,700 a month is not enough for anybody to live off of. And so I just wanted to point that out as folks are listening to those programs, that it is that lower bar, and that it is a little bit more easier. It might be easier for them to access depending upon where they are than other programs that might be out there.
Yes.
So thank you. Those are my questions, Chair.
All right, seeing no other questions, we will move on. Thank you again, Deputy Director Webster. Last but not least, and actually I should say last and the most, is our Department of Columbus Water and Power. It's going to take me a little while to adjust to that. And we have our Deputy Director with us, John Lee. I'll turn it over to you, John.
Good afternoon, Chair Bankston and members of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present an overview of Columbus Water and Power's 2025 capital improvement budget and our capital improvement plan. What you'll see today largely in my presentation is a focus really on citywide regional types of projects that we got in our plan. We also have several street lighting projects and stormwater projects as well. But today I'm really going to kind of focus on what's driving those numbers. And it really is a regional demand for capacity for water and sewer. So here you can see that we're requesting a total of $1.7 billion in new funding and $177 million in carryover for a total request of $1.9 billion. Columbus Water and Power operates 4 enterprise funds, and we're supported by revenue from our water and sewer customers. Our sources of funding largely include the State of Ohio Revolving Fund from the Ohio EPA and the Ohio Water Development Authority. We also receive general obligation bonds to fund our projects as well. What really guides us each day is our commitment to provide reliable water, sewer, and stormwater and power services to the region. We do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To do this, we have to build and maintain infrastructure and meet the demands and capacity needs of a growing regional population. As part of our mission, we meet our regulatory requirements, we provide affordable utility rates, and we provide assistance programs for those in need. We provide water and sewer services to over 1.4 million customers in the region. And each day we deliver over 145 million gallons of water and treat 181 million gallons of wastewater. We manage stormwater systems, streetlights, and have a team that implements the mayor's climate action plan. So I'll go down our priorities, our top 5 priorities in our 2025 CIB. And again, you'll see here kind of a theme of our regional focus. Number 1, our 4th water plant. I'll briefly highlight that project. That's currently in the final design phases. We plan to bid that project in the fall. This plant will provide the additional water capacity to meet the growing demands of the region. I'll have a little bit more information on this in my presentation. Our water main rehab program, this is an annual investment each year. So you'll see it in the 2025 CIB. You also see it in the CIP. We use this program to maintain the integrity of our 3,600 miles of water line that we have in our system. To support growth and development, we've got a major sanitary subtrunk extension project in the northeast area, which I'll talk about in more detail. In the downtown area and the Arena District, we've got a large stormwater project to mitigate flooding near the confluence of the Scioto and Olentangy River. And then finally, I'll touch on some improvements at our compost facility and just due to growing demand there as well. Looking over at the next 6 years, again, we have got a lot of projects that are continually funded each year, notably our 4th water plant. So it's going to be bid in 2025, but it's going to continue construction and require a series of loans in 26, 27, and 28. And the total cost of this project is around $2.2 billion. This will be the largest capital improvement project the department has ever undertaken. As mentioned, our water line rehabilitation program. This is an annual program. We'll continue this each year through 2030, replacing water lines in various neighborhoods. We're also replacing lead service lines. This is one of the reasons why we see this program increasing to $500 million over this period. Another topic is water reuse. Water reuse is important as we're looking at providing water to commercial customers. This is actually non-potable water that would be delivered to commercial customers. So we're looking at various sites and locations around the city right now. We're actually in the study phase, and this total project's estimated around $274 million. The map here is just a snapshot of our projects. We have so many projects. I didn't want to just put them all on the slide here. A few that I talked about here today are noted. The 4th water plant is up there in the left-hand northwest quadrant. You can see it kind of outside the district maps there, all the way at the top there, that little yellow dot. That's where the 4th water plant is going to be located. You can see in District 8 on the south end, we have our compost facility, and we're also constructing our Three Creeks Tunnel down there to provide additional capacity. The Arena District Stormwater Improvement Project I mentioned is in District 7, and the Central College Subtrunk Project is in District 5. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about some of these projects. This slide shows the fourth water plant and the transmission line. You can see there in the top left, that's kind of a graphic drawing of what it will look like once it's constructed. That is up in Concord Township along the side of a river. Right below that graphic, you can see what's actually going on the site right now. We have a contract, a pre-contract to the major construction contract where they're actually developing the site. This is around a $100 million contract. You can see earth is being moved up there and it's ready for construction. The third graphic there is the transmission line. So from the plant located along the river, at the very top of that graphic, you can see two lines coming down. We are running two lines from that plant for redundancy. Going down through largely in the Dublin area and then connecting into our transmission system. The transmission line will be complete in 2030 and the plant is estimated to be completed in 2033. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about water reuse. So this shows a conceptual design of what water reuse, what the studies are showing, and an actual strategy for deploying water reuse in our system. It's kind of a new concept for us here in Central Ohio, but with the growing demand from data centers in particular, our potable water sources is something that we need to provide, and we feel that this is an investment worthwhile. Data centers need water for cooling their infrastructure and do not require, in many cases, drinkable water to do that. In many areas of the country, we see utilities citing industrial parks that house data centers near wastewater treatment plants. In order to develop this purple pipe system is what they call it. You can see there all those lines that are in purple. That's what we call a purple pipe system. And we denote it that way just so we know it's non-potable. You can't drink this water, but it's just for cooling. So this is just a conceptual design. You can see there, you can see Rickenbacker noted there. You can see one of the major companies that's a large water consumer, Andrill, and then you can see our Southerly wastewater treatment plant located in that purple or pink area to the left. This slide shows some of our needed improvements at our Southerly wastewater treatment plant. Again, multiple projects going on and planned for at this site, just again due to the growing need and the capacity demands of the region. One of the projects on this map is the Southerly Affluent Pump Station Expansion Project. That is actually number 4 there at the bottom, and that one will increase the plant's treatment capacity by 110 million gallons a day up to 550 million gallons per day. And this project will also be in design in 2027. This next slide shows a couple of diagrams of the Subtrunk Extension Project in the northeast area near New Albany. A lot of growth in that area, a lot of growth in development. This project is going to be a 48-inch, 9,000-foot micro tunnel. So we're going to be going underground tunneling to put in that 48-inch sewer. That's being constructed to allow more growth and development in that service area. The construction notice to proceed is planned for early 2026 with a completion date around 2029, and the total cost is around $61 million. Next year, I wanted to talk a little bit about our water rehab program. We do multiple water line rehabilitation projects in neighborhoods all across the city. What this shows here is kind of a heat map of where those breaks are occurring. So breaks do occur all throughout the year, largely in the winter months due to freeze and thaw conditions. But I wanted to illustrate the investments that we made and how we see that curve going down. That bottom right picture there shows how we've been making the investments over the years in our waterline rehab program have really been beneficial in the reduction in those breaks. And then finally, my final slide and picture here is just some of the things that we're doing at our compost facility. here in the next year. We've had 3 phases of this project. So at our compost facility, what we do is we receive a byproduct of the wastewater treatment process, and we basically mix that byproduct with mulch, we mix it with wood chips, and we create a really nice organic type of soil that largely commercial customers come and they bring in semis and they take it away, they apply it to farmers' fields. It's a really great nutrient-packed product. So we do need to make some investments in there. We are going to be actually pouring a large concrete pad and some storage facilities there. Just because of the volume that we get, we just have to have more space. So that's going to be a project that's going to be ongoing here in 2026, first quarter, with a budget around $22 million. And I'm happy to present that this is our 9th straight year of beneficial reuse. So what does that mean? That means that if we didn't have a program like this where we were taking these byproducts from our wastewater treatment process and we weren't applying them to land, we weren't developing compost, we weren't putting them on tree farms, we would probably have to landfill these byproducts. So we're very proud and happy of our commitment to beneficial reuse over the last 9 years. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Always fascinating. I think that when we see that number, like largest capital budget is over $2 billion, but just to see how much of it actually goes into our utilities, a lot of stuff that you don't actually get to see, but is critical not only for our city, but for our region's growth and our economic competitive advantage. That's what keeps us competitive. Speaking of that, just to clarify around utilities, it is paid for by ratepayers. Can you talk about this? And you may have said it when I had to step out. I apologize. How many customers we're serving and across how many communities? Because I think that's really important to point out that this is not just the residents of Columbus shouldering this cost for the region, but it really is anyone that is a ratepayer of Columbus Water and Power.
Sure, Chair Bankston. You're right. We are supported solely by revenues from our ratepayers. So basically the bills that go out to our residential and commercial customers, the revenue that comes in from that supports our operations expenses and the debt service for our capital projects. Our service area is over 5 counties. And so we're serving 1.4 million residents, and that includes the City of Columbus residents and also all the suburbs, portions of Franklin County. We've got portions of Pickaway County, Delaware County, all 5 counties around Franklin. So that's one of the big challenges is planning for all this growth and development in the region. As we have seen, and the projections for population are going to continue to grow, and that's one of the main drivers really for the 4th water plant. We have 3 water plants right now, and we are getting to the point where we're reaching capacity just based on all the growth. And as I mentioned, the data centers that are coming in and how much they're consuming on a monthly basis.
And can you talk a little bit about the 4th water plant as far as capacity? What will that do for us as far as projection goes? Do we think that the 4th water plant and what we are anticipating will be able to serve the anticipated growth that we are going to see?
Chair Bankston, we do think that it will. Right now, we've got 3 water plants, and we've modeled, where are we going to be and in the next few years? And you have basically plant capacity. That's a fixed amount that the plants can actually treat, and then you model that against demand and demand projections. And so right now, if we do not invest in this 4th water plant, we are going to be in some potentially dangerous territory by 2030 by not having the capacity. So this 4th water plant is going to be able to produce at a minimum 50 million gallons per day with a max capacity up to 80 million gallons per day. So it's going to be coming down and feeding just the whole distribution system. So all three of our plants are able to be connected, so in one big distribution system. So, if there's a pull from one area, say in the northeast, we're able to feed through the new water plant in just one kind of cohesive system. So one thing about utilities is you have to plan for these things and do a lot of master planning, many, many years in advance. And we have been doing this 10 years ago. We knew that there was going to be a point where we were going to have to develop a fourth water plant. We knew that we could face drought conditions. Last year was a very, very dry year. And fortunately, we had the forethought and the master planning where we actually built reservoirs. So there was no interruption in the water supply and the water demand because we had those built, even though we were in severe drought conditions.
Yep, thank you for that. And I just always want to point that out because I think we do 5 years for some of our other things, but utilities is looking at 10 years in the projection of the growth. And then again, how we finance those projects. So, we're always transparent with folks. When we go to the ballot, the voted bond packages that we do does not increase folks' taxes, and it gives us the ability to borrow, but we pay for our utilities infrastructure through ratepayers. So that is why you see those rate increases year over year. And so just to level set with residents and with all of those that are water consumers, that's why those rates go, because that we're investing in this infrastructure that continues to make sure that we have clean drinking water and that we continue to be able to have enough of it to continue to accommodate our growth. Any questions for my colleagues, Councilmember?
Can we go back to the purple pipes? Is that a new system that we would be putting in, or are we using an existing system that's in?
Councilmember Barossa de Padilla, this would be a new system. So it would be basically purple pipe that would have to be installed in the ground. We can't use existing pipe. So right now we're under a study to really look at what is the best locations. Is it better to locate it near a wastewater treatment plant? Is it better to locate it near a water plant through a water scalping process? So there's a lot of communities in the country, and you see a lot of this purple pipe and reuse being used out in the arid states of the West. Just they don't have the supply, and so what they're doing is they're 10, 20 years ahead of us with this type of development. I was just speaking with, I want to say it was in Arizona. I think that they've got certain policies out there where they're like 100% reuse. Everything that is processed at their wastewater plants, they're 100% recycling. Where what we do is we process it, it's clean, then it goes out through our outfall into the river. So what you have here with this purple pipe is what we're seeing is that companies that have a high demand for water like to be located near these wastewater treatment plants because, the cost is less if they're located there to put that pipe in the ground and get it to them faster. So we see a lot of industrial parks around the country. Actually, the design of them are around wastewater treatment plants.
So but just physically, in terms of impact for our residents, then this could be, we're seeing a lot of work done now, a lot of utility work done now in a lot of neighborhoods around the city. So it sounds like this is in the design phase, but then at some point, what folks will experience, though, is some of the utility work they're experiencing now at some point in this map.
I don't think residential customers will really experience it. We're not going to be sending non-potable water to residential customers. They want potable water, drinkable water.
But I mean the street itself, I guess that's the question that I'm asking, is that are we going to have to kind of tear up a street to then install those pipes? And will they be experiencing that is more of the question that I'm asking.
There might be, depending on the alignment of those pipes. As you can see in this area in an industrial park, it's pretty contained. So that's going to be part of the study. What is, with the alignment of these potential purple pipes, where are they going to go? It's possible that they could be going through some neighborhoods and residents could see some disruption in their neighborhood. But it would be along the lines of probably our standard water line projects.
Sure.
Where contractors are in and out, and it's a pretty seamless process with little disruption to residents.
No, that's helpful. I appreciate the breakdown, just because, again, I think, we certainly, all these hearings give us an opportunity to talk about the investment, the why of the investment, the impact of the investment, and to give folks a little bit more insight into it. And so as our residents are watching this or hearing this back or whatever, I think, this is what they think about is what does this impact then look like? Because I don't think anybody would disagree that we want clean water, that we want to ensure that we are using the latest, the best methods to ensure that we are working towards that, right? And especially when I think about, when you think about places like Arizona, I travel a lot to Phoenix. It's a desert, right? It's high temperatures, and we're seeing that increasingly for us. And how are we thinking about using our resources responsibly is, I think, no one's going to disagree with that. But I do think, as with anything, I said this the other day at our council meeting, every time you see a crane, every time you see a cone, that's a sign of progress. Doesn't mean it's less frustrating. So as I saw that map, especially because that's in District 8, I just wanted to ensure what does that impact really mean for folks, right? Both the why, but then also what could that look like? And what is the timeline potentially on that? Because it sounds like it's in design now.
It's in design right now. I would say that, it's actually in study. So we're in study. So the next phase would be design. That would start in 2026.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other questions, that concludes all of our presentations. I want to then thank all of our directors for being here. Again, we had no speaker slips, but you can continue to engage with us throughout the process. There will be another hearing on the capital budget. Again, I want to thank also my colleagues that are here with me today and for all the work that they have put in their individual committees to get us here today. As I said, the next hearing will be next Friday, July 25th, here in council chambers at 1 p.m. That particular hearing will focus on any amendments and the final capital budget if there are major changes, as well as presentations from our external partners who are in the current proposed budget, to hear more from them on what those projects are. I think it's really critical that as we receive those information, all great organizations, but I think it's good for the public to hear what some of those investments are being made. So looking forward actually to hearing from our nonprofit partners next week. Residents who would like to speak at the hearing or want to continue to give us any engagement, written testimony, comments, feedback, please email my office, JP Dorval, that's JPDORVAL at columbus.gov. And if you want to speak, that's by 9 a.m. next Friday. And that will be the final hearing for this year's capital budget. Our goal is to, again, get this passed by July 28th before we go to August recess. Seeing no other comments or questions from my colleagues, that concludes today's hearing. Thanks, everybody.